Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the boots of a World War II Jumasham II soldier, living a day in the gritty, pulse-pounding chaos of 1944. Picture yourself crouched in a muddy foxhole, the air sharp with gunpowder and damp earth, your breath fogging in the dawn chill. Every creak of a branch could be the enemy. And let's be real, you probably won't survive the coffee, let alone the day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're jolted awake in a foxhole near Normandy. The sky barely gray. Your back stiff from sleeping on dirt. Dawn's your starting gun. And a U.S. Army private's routine kicks off with a groan. Over 16 million Americans served in WW2. And mornings were a universal grind of cold, cramped limbs, and quick checks for danger. You're shaking off sleep, your wool uniform itchy, the damp seeping through. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swore they woke to rats stealing their socks, mistaking them for snacks. Historians still argue whether these early starts sharpened soldiers' instincts or just wore them down faster. You're splashing icy water from your canteen on your face, the sting waking you up. Your buddy, a Brooklyn kid with a crooked grin, is already cursing the mud caked on his boots. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't soldiers play alarm clock? Because dawn's louder than a drill sergeant. You're checking your M1 rifle. It's metal cold, ensuring it's ready for whatever's out there. The foxhole smells of wet earth and sweat, and you're digging out a razor, scraping stubble with no mirror, just habit keeping you human. The camp's stirring, distant clinks of gear mixing with low voices. You're pulling on your helmet, its weight familiar, and rolling up your blanket, a thin shield against the cold. You're picturing a modern bed soft, warm, not this dirt nest. Another joke, what's a GI's favorite sunrise? One he lives to see. Some guys whisper about home. But you're focused, scanning the tree line for movement. You're thinking of those Wubble 2 movies, heroic. Clean while this dawn's just raw survival. Night's last shadows linger. And you're crouching low. The foxhole's edge crumbling. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers carved their initials into foxhole walls. A fleeting mark of existence. You're wondering how these men kept going. Their mornings a blur of instinct and grit. The air's tense. A distant shell's rumble reminding you death's close. Another soft joke, what's a soldier's morning hobby? Not dying, because it's a full-time job. You're starting to see why dawn was more than waking. It was a daily rebirth, a shaky step into the war's unrelenting grind. You're still crouched in that Normandy foxhole. The dawn's chill biting your fingers as you fumble with a small tin of breakfast rations, your stomach growling louder than the distant artillery. The air's damp, smelling of wet wool and gun oil. And you're prying open a K-ration can. Its contents, a mystery of mush. Breakfast is a soldier's first fight of the day. And in 1944, U.S. troops relied on over 1 billion K-rations compact. Lightweight meals meant to keep you alive. Not happy. You're staring at a grayish blob labeled ham and eggs. And you're wondering if it's food or punishment. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swore their K rations were packed with sawdust, meant to bulk up the meal, Historians still argue whether these rations fueled soldiers effectively or sapped morale with their monotony. You're sitting on a crate. The foxhole's walls muddy as your Brooklyn buddy grimaces at his own tin, joking about his ma's pancakes being worth a Purple Heart. The ham's rubbery, cold despite your attempt to heat it over a tiny sterno stove. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play chef because their kitchen's a can? You're chewing slowly, the egg's powdery texture sticking to your teeth, and you're washing it down with instant coffee that tastes like burnt socks. The camp's alive with clinks of spoons and low curses. A shell's rumble keeping you tense. K rations were designed for portability, but you're craving a diner bacon. Syrup, not this. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite breakfast? One that doesn't fight back. Some guys trade their biscuits for cigarettes. But you're eating every crumb, knowing lunch might not come. You're thinking of that foxhole dawn gritty, raw while this meal's a grim necessity. Morning's light creeps in, and you're licking the tin clean. The coffee's bitterness lingering. Rats are sniffing around, drawn by the scraps, and you're kicking them away. A quirky story floats up some GIs wrote to Hitler on empty ration tins, tossing them toward enemy lines. You're wondering how these men kept their humor, dreaming of diners while choking down mush. The foxhole's quiet, save for a buddy's cough and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke. What's a K ration fan's hobby? Surviving. Because it's all they've got. You're starting to see why breakfast was more than food. It was a stubborn act of endurance, a bite of grit to face Normandy's day. The sky's gray, and you're packing the empty tin, your gear clanking as you brace for orders. You're tired, your mouth still gritty, but the men around you are already moving. You're thinking of that dawn wake-up cold, tense while this meal's a fleeting fuel. The trench's chill bites, but the coffee's faint warmth lingers. Proof you're still here. You're picturing those wubby-woo ration ads, cheerful, fake wishing for a real meal, carrying you through the morning, one rubbery bite at a time. You're still in that Normandy foxhole. The bitter aftertaste of K ration coffee clinging to your tongue as you sling a heavy pack over your shoulder. The weight digging into your back. The air's damp, filled with the clank of metal and the low hum of orders. And you're gearing up for a march through enemy territory. 1944. Your hands are busy, checking your ammo pouches. M1 rifle and canteen. Each item a lifeline. A U.S. Infantrymen carried over 70 pounds of gear on average, a crushing load for long treks across war-torn fields. You're adjusting your helmet, its strap chafing, and you're wondering how you'll move fast with this burden. A quirky tidbit, some GIs stuffed their packs with extra socks, claiming they were worth more than bullets in the rain. Historians still argue whether heavy gear gave soldiers an edge or slowed them to a crawl under fire. You're standing at the foxhole's edge, mud sucking at your boots, as your Brooklyn buddy curses his own pack, joking about trading it for a Jeep. The rifle's cold steel is familiar, but the pack's straps bite like a bully. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play pack mule? Because they're already enlisted. You're double-checking your grenades, their weight a grim reminder of what's ahead. And you're wishing for a modern backpack light. Padded, not this canvas beast. The camp's buzzing. Men forming ranks as a sergeant barks orders. You're hoisting the pack higher, your knees protesting, and stepping onto a muddy path, the march looming. You're picturing a gym workout, dumbbells, playlists, not this slog. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite load, one he can drop? Some guys ditch non-essentials, but you're keeping your gear, knowing every clip counts. You're thinking of that K-ration breakfast rubbery, grim while this packs a heavier burden. Morning's light is dim, and you're trudging forward. The pack's straps cutting deeper. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some GIs carved nicknames into their rifle stocks. A touch of home on the march. You're wondering how these men kept moving, dreaming of rest while hauling tons. The path's quiet, save for boots squelching and a buddy's grunt. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby? Unpacking. Because it's a pipe dream, you're starting to see why gearing up was more than prep. It was a test of will, a step into Normandy's unforgiving day. The sky's overcast, and you're wiping sweat from your brow, the pack's weight relentless. You're tired, your shoulders aching, but the men around you are pushing on, eyes scanning the horizon. You're thinking of that foxhole dawn tense, cold while this march is a grinding start. The mud's chill bites, but the rifle's grip steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing those ration tins, small, tough wishing for a lighter load, carrying you through the morning, one heavy step at a time. You're trudging through that muddy Normandy path, the pack's straps carving into your shoulders as you pause to check your sodden boots. The squelch of water, a grim reminder of Trenchfoot's threat. 1944. The air's damp, heavy with earth and the distant crack of rifles, and you're peeling off a soaked sock, your toes pruned and raw. Trenchfoot plagued World War II. Two soldiers, with over 70,000 U.S. and British troops disabled by it in Europe alone, caused by prolonged wet conditions. You're wincing, rubbing your feet, and wondering if you'll walk tomorrow. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swore sprinkling cigarette ash on their toes warded off infection. A desperate old wives' tale. Historians still argue whether Trenchfoot was a preventable logistical failure or an inevitable curse of the war's wet fronts. You're crouched by a hedgerow, the path's mud caking your knees, as your Brooklyn buddy grimaces at his own blistered feet, joking about trading his boots for flip-flops. The socks are useless, more sponge than shield, and you're dusting your toes with foot powder. It stings sharp but welcome. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play podiatrist? Because their patients are all mud. You're lacing up fresh socks, your last pair, praying they stay dry. But the rain's already spitting. The march hums with low curses. Men hobbling as a sergeant growls to keep moving. Dry boots were a fantasy. You're picturing modern sneakers breathable. Waterproof, not these leather traps. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite shoe? One that doesn't drown. Some guys wrap their feet in newspaper. But you're sticking to powder, knowing it's a losing fight. You're thinking of that heavy pack brutal, grounding while this foot pain's a sharper foe. Daylight's gray, and you're limping back into line. The boots squish relentless. Flies buzz, drawn by the damp, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers traded rations for French farmers' clogs, a brief escape from soggy hell. You're wondering how these men kept marching, dreaming of warm fires while their toes rotted. The path's quiet, save for boots sloshing and a buddy's wince. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby drying out? Because it's pure fiction. You're starting to see why trench foot was more than misery. It was a silent battle, a step through Normandy's relentless wet. The sky drizzles, and you're pulling your coat tighter. The boots chill, biting deeper. You're exhausted, your feet throbbing, but the men around you are pushing on, eyes fixed ahead. You're thinking of that K-ration breakfast meager. Cold while this pain's a hungrier beast. The mud's grip slows you, but the rifle's weight steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing those foxhole dawns gritty, tense, wishing for dry ground, carrying you through the day, one sodden step at a time. You're still limping along that muddy Normandy path, the sting of trench foot gnawing at your toes as you slump against a shattered tree trunk, clutching a crumpled letter from home. 1944. The air's damp, laced with gunpowder and the rustle of paper, and you're unfolding the letter. Its ink smudged but precious. Your heart races, hungry for news, knowing words from loved ones could lift or crush a soldier's spirit. Over 1 billion pieces of mail reached USAS, troops during World War II, a vital link to the home front that kept morale flickering. You're scanning the lines, and you're wondering if it's good news or heartbreak. A quirky tidbit: some GIs claimed they could smell their mom's perfume on letters, a whiff of home in the mud. Historians still argue whether mail boosted resilience or deepened soldiers' longing for peace. You're perched on a root, the path's mud caking your boots as your Brooklyn buddy reads his own letter, his face softening at news of his kid sister's birthday. The paper's thin, your mom's handwriting shaky, telling you about the garden and rationing. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play postman? Because they'd hoard the mail. You're rereading a line about apple pie, the words blurring, and you're fighting a lump in your throat. The war feeling 1,000,000 miles away. The march hums with distant orders, and you're tucking the letter into your jacket. Close to your heart. Mail was censored, but love slipped through. A lifeline in Normandy's grind. You're picturing a modern text emojis. Instant, not this fragile sheet. Another joke: what's a soldier's favorite stamp? One that brings hope. Some guys trade cigarettes for extra letters, but you're keeping this one safe. Its weight lighter than your pack. You're thinking of those soggy boots, painful, grim, while this letter's a warm spark. Daylight's dim, and you're folding the paper carefully. The trees bark rough against your back. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up: some soldiers wrote replies on bullet casings, a defiant mail hack. You're wondering how these men kept going, dreaming of home while clutching scribbled words. The path's quiet, save for boots squelching and a buddy's sigh. Another soft joke: what's a GI's favorite hobby? Reading. Because it's a ticket home. You're starting to see why letters were more than news. They were a pulse of love, a page of strength in Normandy's brutal day. The sky's gray, and you're shouldering your pack again. The letter's comfort lingering. You're tired, your feet aching. But the men around you are moving, eyes on the horizon. You're thinking of that K-ration breakfast cold, rubbery, while this letter's a richer fuel. The mud's chill bites, but the paper's warmth steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that foxhole dawn tense, raw wishing for more mail, carrying you through the morning, one cherished word at a time. You're still clutching that letter's warmth against your chest, the Normandy mud sucking at your boots as you creep through a dense hedgerow. 1944 on a tense patrol. The air's thick with damp leaves and the faint tang of cordite, and you're gripping your M1 rifle, heart pounding as every rustle could be a German sniper. Patrols were a soldier's daily gamble, with over 40% of U.S. infantry casualties in Normandy linked to scouting missions like this. You're scanning the shadows, your breath shallow, wondering if you'll make it back to camp. A quirky tidbit, some GIs tied tin cans to their gear, hoping the rattle would scare off ambushes, though it often just annoyed their squad. Historians still argue whether patrols sharpen soldiers' instincts or stretch their nerves to breaking. You're crawling low, thorns snagging your jacket, as your Brooklyn buddy whispers a curse, his rifle catching on a branch. The squad spread out, faces grim, signaling with hand gestures to avoid noise. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play hide and seek? Because the stakes are too high. You're wiping sweat from your eyes, the rifle's weight grounding you, and you're praying the hedgerow's cover holds. Each step a test of nerve. The forest hums with a distant shell's thud, and you're freezing, spotting a glint, maybe a helmet, maybe nothing. Patrols mapped enemy lines, but one wrong move meant disaster. You're picturing a modern drone cameras. Safety, not this blind creep. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite trail? One without bullets? Some guys carry extra ammo, but you're light. Speed, your only friend. You're thinking of that letter's comfort soft. Distant, while this patrols a sharp edge of fear. Twilight's creeping in, and you're inching forward. The hedgerow's thorns relentless. Birds scatter, spooked, and you're holding your breath, rifle ready. A quirky story floats up. Some patrols left souvenirs like empty ration tins to taunt the enemy. You're wondering how these men kept steady, dreaming of home while stalking danger. The squad's silent, save for a twig snap and a buddy's hiss. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby? Not getting shot. Because it's full-time work. You're starting to see why patrols were more than scouting. They were a dance with death, a step through Normandy's deadly maze. The sky's dimming, and you're signaling to halt. The patrol's tension coiling tighter. You're exhausted, your hands sweaty on the rifle. But the men around you are poised, eyes locked on the shadows. You're thinking of those soggy boots, painful, grounding while this fears a heavier load. The forest's chill bites, but the squad's quiet trust steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that K-ration breakfast grim, cold wishing for safety, carrying you through the day, one cautious step at a time. You're easing back from that nerve-wracking Normandy patrol. The hedgerow's thorns still snagging your memory as you slump against a crumbling barn wall near Caen. 1944, sharing a cigarette with your squad. The air's thick with tobacco smoke and the faint whiff of hay. And you're passing the cigarette, its glow a tiny beacon in the dusk. Your hands tremble slightly, but the ritual of smoking grounds you. A moment of camaraderie amid the war's grind. Over 80% of U.S. soldiers smoked during World War II. with cigarettes included in K rations as a morale booster. You're inhaling deeply, the nicotine calming your jitters, and you're wondering how this small act keeps men tethered. A quirky tidbit: some GIs traded smokes for French kisses from locals, or so camp legends boasted. Historians still argue whether cigarettes were a vital stress relief or a health curse masked by wartime need. You're leaning against the barn, its wood splintered, as your Brooklyn buddy exhales a cloud, joking about his barstool dreams back home. The cigarette's paper crackles, its warmth a contrast to the evening's chill. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play bartender? Because they're only shots of smoke. You're swapping stories about pre-war summers, the smoke curling, and you're feeling a rare ease. The patrol's tension loosening. The camp hums with distant chatter. A shell's echo reminding you danger's close. Cigarettes were currency traded for food, favors, or intel. You're picturing a modern vape flavored. Sleek, not this harsh Lucky Strike. Another joke. What's a soldier's favorite puff? One he finishes. Some guys save their smokes for patrols, but you're sharing this one. The act binding you to your mates. You're thinking of that hedgerow patrol tense, sharp while this breaks a soft pause. Twilight's deepening, and you're taking a final drag. The barn's shadows growing, flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up: some soldiers used cigarette butts to mark paths. A smoky breadcrumb trail. You're wondering how these men found comfort, dreaming of bars while puffing in ruins. The barn's quiet, save for a buddy's laugh and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby? Smoking. Because it's a breath of peace. You're starting to see why cigarettes were more than habit. They were a shared spark, a puff of brotherhood in Cannes' grim dusk. The stars are faint through the haze, and you're stamping out the butt. The cigarette's warmth lingering. You're tired, your lungs tingling. But the men around you are swapping another tale. You're thinking of that letter from home, soft, hopeful, while this smoke's a gritty anchor. The night's chill bites, but the squad's banter steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing those soggy boots raw, grounding, wishing for another drag, carrying you through the evening, one shared puff at a time. You're still leaning against that splintered barn near Cannes, the cigarette's smoky warmth fading as you trudge back to a muddy U.S. camp. 1944, where a lukewarm midday meal awaits. The air's heavy with damp earth and the faint grease of cooking. And you're clutching a tin mess kit. Its contents a slop of canned stew that's more broth than meat. Your stomach's rumbling, eager for anything. But the sight of this grayish mush dims your hopes. Midday meals were a rushed affair for Boipu soldiers. With over 500 million C rations, bulkier than K rations, dished out to U.S. troops for field lunches, you're spooning the stew, its taste bland and metallic, wondering if it's fuel or just filler. A quirky tidbit: some GIs swore their stew tins were recycled from paint cans, leaving a chemical aftertaste. Historians still argue whether C rations sustained soldiers' strength or eroded morale with their repetitive dreariness. You're crouched by a makeshift table, a crate balanced on rocks, as your Brooklyn buddy grimaces at his own mess kit, joking about his ma's meatloaf shaming this slop. The stew's lukewarm, with a sad carrot chunk floating like a lost ship. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play lunch lady? Because their soup's a war crime. You're chewing a hard biscuit from the ration. Its crunch loud, and you're washing it down with canteen water that tastes of chlorine. The camp buzzes with clinking tins and low grumbles, a distant shell's thud keeping you alert. C rations were meant for quick meals, but you're picturing a modern food truck tacos. Fries, not this. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite lunch, one that doesn't repeat on you? Some guys spice their stew with looted herbs, but you're eating it plain, the grease coating your lips. You're thinking of that cigarette break calm, shared while this meal's a joyless chore. Afternoon's haze settles, and you're scraping the tin clean, the crate wobbling under your elbows. Flies swarm, drawn by the stew's scent, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up some soldiers' carved insults into empty ration tins, a middle finger to the cooks. You're wondering how these men kept their humor, dreaming of diners while choking down mush. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's cough and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke, what's a C ration fan's hobby gagging? Because it's part of the meal. You're starting to see why lunch was more than food. It was a grudging ritual. A bite of persistence in Khan's relentless grind. The sky's overcast, and you're packing your mess kit. The stew's weight settling heavily. You're tired, your mouth still metallic. But the men around you are gearing up for the next task. You're thinking of that hedgerow patrol tense, sharp while this meal's a dull necessity. The mud's chill bites, but the biscuit's faint bulk steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, hopeful, wishing for a real meal, carrying you through the day, one grim spoonful at a time. You're still wiping the greasy residue of that C ration stew from your mess kit in the Khan camp. The midday haze heavy as you hunker down near a battered radio set. 1944, it's static crackling like a storm in your ears. The air's thick with mud's damp tang and the faint hum of machinery. And you're straining to hear garbled orders, your pencil stub scratching code on a scrap of paper. Your heart races, knowing these messages could mean life or death for your squad. Radios were a lifeline in World War II, with over 1 million field sets used by U.S. forces to coordinate movements across Europe. You're twisting dials, the static spiking, and you're wondering if you'll catch the signal in time. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swore their radios picked up French jazz stations, a fleeting tease of normalcy. Historians still argue whether radio comms streamlined battles or sowed chaos with misheard orders. You're crouched by a hedge, the radio's weight tugging your pack, as your Brooklyn buddy keeps watch, muttering about wanting a jukebox instead. The voice cuts through clipped, urgent ordering a flank maneuver, and you're scribbling fast, the pencil snapping. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play DJ? Because their hits are all static. You're relaying the code to a runner, your voice low, and you're praying you got it right. The stakes heavier than your rifle. The camp pulses with distant shouts, a shell's rumble sharpening your focus. Radios were finicky, rain or dust jamming signals, but you're picturing a modern phone clear. Instant, not this clunky box. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite song, one that doesn't end in retreat? Some guys curse their sets, but you're glued to the dial, each word a puzzle piece. You're thinking of that lukewarm stew bland, grim while this task's a sharper hunger. Afternoon's fading, and you're wiping sweat from your brow. The radio's static softening. Flies buzz, drawn by your damp uniform, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some operators sent fake signals to confuse Germans. A risky mind game. You're wondering how these men stayed calm, dreaming of quiet while decoding war's noise. The camp's tense, save for a buddy's whistle and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke, what's a radio man's hobby? Listening. Because silence is a myth. You're starting to see why radios were more than tools. They were a thread of control, a crackle of survival in Khan's chaotic day. The sky's gray, and you're packing the set. The order's delivered, but your nerves still taut. You're tired, your ears ringing. But the men around you are shifting to act on the message. You're thinking of that cigarette break calm, shared while this job's a relentless pulse. The mud's chill bites, but the radio's weight grounds you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, distant, wishing for clearer signals, carrying you through the afternoon, one static-filled word at a time. You're still catching your breath from decoding that radio's crackling orders near Khan. The static's echo fading as you grab a shovel and start digging a new foxhole in the muddy earth. 1944. The air's thick with damp soil and the faint tang of gunpowder. And you're heaving dirt. Your arms burning, knowing this hole might be your only shield tonight. Digging foxholes was a daily grind for World War II soldiers, with U.S. infantrymen often spending over 20% of their time fortifying positions for safety. You're tossing another shovelful, sweat stinging your eyes, and you're wondering if this pit will hold against a shell. A quirky tidbit, some GIs claimed they dug so deep they hit French wine cellars, though it was likely just wishful thinking. Historians still argue whether foxholes offered real protection or just a fleeting sense of control in chaotic battles. You're knee-deep in the hole, the shovel's handle splintering, as your Brooklyn buddy hacks at roots nearby, joking about digging his way back to Coney Island. The earth's heavy, clinging to your boots, and you're shaping the walls, aiming for chest-high cover. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play gardener? Because their only crop is mud. You're piling dirt for a parapet, your back screaming, and you're praying the ground stays firm. Each scoop a bet on survival. The camp hums with distant clanks, a shell's rumble spurring you faster. Foxholes were vital, but grueling, often flooded or collapsed. You're picturing a modern bunker steel, secure, not this dirt womb. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite hole? One he doesn't die in. Some guys line their pits with blankets, but you're keeping it bare. Speed trumping comfort. You're thinking of that radio's urgency tense. Vital while this labor's a slower burn. Evening's creeping in, and you're smoothing the foxhole's edge. The shovel's weight dragging. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers buried empty ration tins in their foxholes. A gift for future diggers. You're wondering how these men kept digging, dreaming of rest while carving earth. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's grunt and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Shoveling. Because it's job security. You're starting to see why digging was more than defense. It was a stubborn stand, a scoop of safety in Khan's relentless fight. The sky's dimming, and you're testing the foxhole's depth, your boots sinking in mud. You're exhausted, your hands blistered. But the men around you are finishing their own pits, eyes on the horizon. You're thinking of that sea ration stew, greasy, grim while this foxhole's a deeper need. The night's chill bites, but the shovel's grip steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft. Hopeful, wishing for solid ground, carrying you through the evening, one muddy scoop at a time. You're still catching your breath in that freshly dug foxhole near Con, the shovel's blisters stinging as you slump against its muddy walls. 1944, waiting for something, anything to happen. The air's damp, heavy with earth and the faint hum of distant gunfire. And you're fidgeting with your rifle's strap, the silence gnawing at your nerves. Boredom was a soldier's shadow in World War II, with infantrymen spending over 60% of their time in idle lulls between action. A test of mental endurance. You're staring at the sky's gray haze, and you're wondering how to stay sharp when time drags like mud. A quirky tidbit, some GIs carve dice from wood scraps, gambling cigarette butts to kill time. Historians still argue whether these waiting games honed soldiers' patience or frayed their sanity in the war's relentless grind. You're sprawled in the foxhole, its dirt crumbling, as your Brooklyn buddy whittles a stick, joking about auditioning for a nap academy. The quiet's oppressive, broken only by a bird's chirp or a far-off shell. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play chess? Because war's already a stalemate. You're flipping through a dog-eared comic from a care package. Superman's heroics, laughably clean compared to this muck. And you're wishing for a radio's crackle to break the monotony. The camp's still. Men dozing or muttering. A sergeant's glare keeping you alert. Downtime meant cleaning gear or writing letters. But you're picturing a modern phone games. Memes, not this empty stare. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite? Wait. One with an end. Some guys swap stories. But you're lost in the comic. Its pages a brief escape. You're thinking of that foxhole's labor grueling, grounding while this boredom's a subtler foe. Evening settling, and you're tracing patterns in the dirt. The foxhole's chill creeping in. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up some soldiers held staring contests with rats, betting smokes on who blinked first. You're wondering how these men stayed sane, dreaming of action while trapped in limbo. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's yawn and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Daydreaming. Because it's free, you're starting to see why waiting was more than boredom. It was a mental marathon. A pause in Khan's chaotic day. The sky's darkening, and you're tucking the comic away. The rifle's weight a reminder of what's coming. You're tired, your mind foggy, but the men around you are stirring, sensing a shift. You're thinking of that radio's orders, urgent, sharp while this lulls a heavy load. The night's chill bites, but the foxhole's walls steady you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, hopeful, wishing for action or sleep, carrying you through the evening, one idle moment at a time. You're still slumped in that Con foxhole, the boredom's fog lifting as you're called to a night watch post on a hill overlooking a shattered village. 1944. The air's cold, thick with damp grass and the faint tang of smoke. And you're gripping your M1 rifle, eyes straining into the inky darkness. Your heart thumps, every shadow a potential threat. And you're wondering if you'll spot the enemy before they spot you. Night watches were a grueling necessity in World War II. with over 30% of U.S. infantrymen assigned to guard duty on any given night to secure positions. You're scanning the horizon, the rifle's weight steadying your nerves, and you're praying for dawn's light. A quirky tidbit: some GIs swore they saw ghosts on watch, blaming fatigue or trench tales for the chills. Historians still argue whether night watches sharpened soldiers' senses or frayed them with sleepless fear. You're crouched behind a low wall, the village's ruins eerie below, as your Brooklyn buddy takes a post nearby, whispering about hating the dark since he was a kid. The silence is heavy, broken by a twig's snap or a distant dog's bark. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play Night Owl? Because the dark's no friend. You're rubbing your eyes, fighting sleep's pull. And you're wishing for a modern night vision scope, not these tired peepers. The camp's hushed. Men sleeping in foxholes while you stand sentinel. Watches lasted hours, and cold gnawed at morale. You're picturing a cozy guard booth heat. Coffee, not this exposed perch. Another joke: what's a soldier's favorite star? One that means morning. Some guys hum to stay awake, but you're silent, ears tuned for trouble. You're thinking of that foxhole's boredom dull. Safe while this watches a sharp edge of dread. Midnight's deep, and you're shifting your weight. The rifle's strap chafing, owls hoot, startling you, and you're gripping the trigger tighter. A quirky story floats up: some soldiers tossed pebbles to test for snipers. A risky game of nerves. You're wondering how these men stayed vigilant, dreaming of beds while staring into nothing. The hill's quiet, save for a buddy's cough and the wind's moan. Another soft joke: what's a GI's favorite hobby? Blinking, because it's all he dares do. You're starting to see why night watch was more than duty. It was a lonely vigil. A gaze into Cannes' haunting night. The stars are faint through clouds, and you're pulling your coat tighter, the cold biting your fingers. You're exhausted, your eyes burning. But the men below depend on your alertness. You're thinking of that sea ration stew, greasy, grim, while this watches a hungrier test. The darkness presses, but the rifle's grip steadies you, proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, hopeful, wishing for daylight, carrying you through the night, one tense glance at a time. You're still shivering on that hilltop night watch near Cannes. The darkness's grip easing as you trudge back to camp at dawn. 1944, ready to tackle the grim task of staying clean in a world of filth. The air's damp, smelling of wet earth and sweat, and you're crouched by a muddy stream, splashing icy water on your face. The sting a rude wake-up. Field hygiene was a constant struggle for World War II soldiers. With over 25% of U.S. troops battling infections from poor sanitation, like dysentery or lice. You're scrubbing your hands with a sliver of gritty soap, wondering if you'll ever feel human again. A quirky tidbit: some GIs used rifle oil as a makeshift deodorant, claiming it masked the stench better than nothing. Historians still argue whether hygiene efforts preserved soldiers' health or were a losing battle against the war's grime. You're perched on a rock, the stream gurgling as your Brooklyn buddy shaves with a dull razor, joking about his barber dreams back home. Your uniform's stiff with dirt, and you're brushing it with a stick, the mud flaking off in clumps. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play spa day? Because their bath's a puddle. You're dousing your hair with canteen water, the cold shocking, and you're wishing for a modern shower hot. endless, not this makeshift rinse. The camp stirs with morning's clatter, and you're checking for lice. The itch, a nagging foe. Hygiene kits were issued but scarce, leaving you to improvise. You're picturing a drugstore shampoo. Towels, not this. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite soap? One that actually lathers. Some guys boil their socks for a quick wash. But you're scrubbing raw. The soap holds out. You're thinking of that night watch tense. Cold while this hygiene's a grittier fight. Morning's light grows, and you're shaking out water your shirt. The stream's chill lingering. Flies buzz, drawn by your damp skin, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers used empty ammo cans as wash basins, a clanking laundry hack. You're wondering how these men kept dignity, dreaming of clean sheets while scrubbing in streams. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's curse and the breeze's rustle. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Scrubbing. Because it's a daily war, you're starting to see why hygiene was more than cleanliness. It was a stubborn grip on humanity. A splash against Khan's relentless dirt. The sun's rising, and you're pulling on your damp jacket. The soap's faint scent fading. You're tired. Your skin raw. But this men around you are prepping for the day. Face is set. You're thinking of that sea ration stew, greasy. Grim while this washes a fleeting wind. The morning's chill bites, but the stream's cold steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft. Hopeful, wishing for a real bath. Carrying you through the morning. One chilly splash at a time. You're still shaking off the icy sting of that streamside wash near Khan. The soap's faint clean fading as you huddle in a muddy tent. 1944. Sifting through whispered rumors that ripple through the camp like wildfire. The air's thick with canvas damp and the low buzz of voices. And you're leaning in, catching tales of enemy retreats or secret weapons. Your mind racing to separate hope from hogwash. Rumors were a soldier's shadow in World War II, with over 70% of UCA's troops relying on gossip to gauge the war's pulse, filling gaps left by sparse official news. You're listening to a wild claim about a German super tank, and you're wondering if it's true or just fear dressed up as fact. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swore they heard rumors of Elvis enlisting. Absurd spark of home in the mud. Historians still argue whether rumors boosted morale with hope or spread panic that weakened resolve. You're crouched on a crate, the tent's flaps swaying, as your Brooklyn buddy spins a tale about a French village hiding Allied spies, his eyes gleaming. The stories are a mix, some lift your spirits, others knot your gut. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play journalist? Because their scoops are all bunk. You're sharing a rumor about extra rations coming. The thought of real food making your mouth water. But skepticism keeps you grounded. The camp hums with distant clanks. A shell's echo sharpening the air. Rumors spread fast, passed during smokes or patrols, a currency of trust. You're picturing a modern news feed verified. Instant, not this grapevine. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite headline? War's over, even if it's a lie. Some guys bet smokes on rumors, but you're just listening, weighing each word. You're thinking of that streamside scrub raw, grounding while this gossip's a flightier fuel. Afternoon's fading, and you're poking holes in a tale about invincible tanks. The tent's gloom deepening, Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers spread fake rumors to trick German scouts. A sly mind game. You're wondering how these men stayed hopeful, dreaming of victory while sorting lies. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's laugh and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby? Gossiping, because it's free news. You're starting to see why rumors were more than chatter. They were a pulse of belief, a whisper of survival in Khan's uncertain day. The sky's graying, and you're stepping out of the tent. The rumors buzz, lingering. You're tired, your mind's spinning. But the men around you are swapping more tales, faces eager. You're thinking of that night watch, tense, silent while this gossip's a noisy spark. The mud's chill bites, but the camp's hum steadies you, proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, true, wishing for real news, carrying you through the day, one whispered hope at a time. You're stepping out of that rumor-filled tent near Khan, the buzz of gossip fading as you scramble toward a sudden burst of gunfire. 1944. Your boots slipping in the mud. The air's sharp with cordite and the crack of rifles. And you're diving behind a shattered wall, heart pounding as a skirmish erupts. Your M1 rifle's ready, and you're firing at shadowy figures across a field, wondering if this is your last fight. Skirmishes were common in World War II, with over 50% of U.S. infantry engagements in Normandy being small. Chaotic clashes like this, you're aiming through smoke, your breath ragged, and you're praying your squad holds. A quirky tidbit: some GIs claimed they shouted baseball taunts at Germans during fights. A bizarre slice of home in chaos. Historians still argue whether these sudden battles honed soldiers' reflexes or drained them with constant fear. You're pressed against the wall, bullets pinging nearby, as your Brooklyn buddy returns fire, cursing louder than the gunfire. The enemy's close, maybe a patrol, stumbled into your lines, and you're reloading, hands shaking. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play dodgeball? Because bullets don't bounce. You're spotting a German helmet, squeezing the trigger, and you're wishing for a modern drone strike, not this raw scrap. The field roars with shouts and explosions, and you're advancing, crouching low. Skirmishes were fast, often over in minutes, but deadly. You're picturing a video game respawns. Stats, not this life or death blur. Another joke: what's a soldier's favorite fight? One he walks away from. Some guys freeze, bounce eyes, but you're moving, adrenaline pumping. You're thinking of those camp rumors, wild, hopeful while this clash is brutally real. Dawn's breaking, and the gunfire slows, the enemy retreating. You're catching your breath, the wall's grit grounding you. Flies buzz, drawn by blood, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up: some soldiers collected enemy shell casings as grim trophies after fights. You're wondering how these men kept fighting, dreaming of peace while trading shots. The field's quiet, save for a buddy's gasp and the wind's moan. Another soft joke: what's a GI's favorite hobby? Surviving. Because it's the only score that counts. You're starting to see why skirmishes were more than battles. They were a pulse of instinct, a desperate stand in Khan's relentless war. Wind down. The dawn's soft light washes over the Marne. The skirmishes echo, fading as you sink onto the cool grass, your rifle heavy beside you. The war's sharp edges blur. The mud, the fear, the gunfire softening into a distant hum, like a fan spinning in your room. Each soldier's day from foxhole dawns to frantic fights wove a tapestry of grit and hope. Now just whispers in the breeze. You're safe, wrapped in the present, where the only battle is for a soft pillow. Let the trenches drift away, the rations' taste dissolve, and the stars cradle you. Sleep deep, dreamer, their courage a quiet lullaby, carrying you gently into dreams. You're still catching your breath behind that shattered wall near Caen. The skirmish's gunfire fading as you stumble into a ruined village at sunrise. 1944. Reflecting on surviving another day, the air's heavy with dust and the faint smell of charred wood. And you're leaning against a crumbling church wall, your M1 rifle propped beside you, its barrel warm. Your chest heaves, the quiet almost surreal after the chaos. And you're wondering how you're still standing when so many aren't. Over 2 million USS soldiers fought in the European theater, with survival often hinging on luck as much as skill. You're tracing a crack in the wall, and you're thinking about the cost of each dawn. A quirky tidbit: some GIs carried rabbit's feet from home, swearing it kept death at bay. Historians still argue whether such superstitions gave soldiers courage or just masked their terror. You're sitting on a broken pew, the village eerily still, as your Brooklyn buddy slumps nearby, lighting a cigarette. His hands shaky, but his grin defiant. The sunrise paints the rubble gold, a fleeting beauty in the wreckage. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play sunrise yoga? Because their stretch is dodging shells. You're sipping from your canteen, the water warm but grounding, and you're savoring this pause, knowing it won't last. The village hums with distant footsteps, your squad regrouping. Survival meant constant vigilance, but you're picturing a modern morning coffee. News not this fragile calm. Another joke: what's a soldier's favorite dawn one he sees? Some guys mutter thanks to the sky, but you're just breathing. The air a gift. You're thinking of that skirmish's terror raw, close, while this moment's a rare exhale. Morning's light grows, and you're dusting off your helmet. The church's silence heavy. Flies buzz, drawn by sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up: some soldiers etched their names on village walls, a mark to say they lived. You're wondering how these men kept hope, dreaming of home while surrounded by ruin. The village is quiet, save for a buddy's cough and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke: what's a GI's favorite hobby? Breathing? Because it's a miracle. You're starting to see why sunrise was more than light. It was a quiet victory, a step through Caen's brutal day. The sun's rising, and you're shouldering your rifle. The wall's grit lingering on your palms. You're tired, your body aching. But the men around you are moving, eyes scanning the horizon. You're thinking of that sea-ration stew, greasy. Grim while this dawns a deeper fuel. The morning's chill fades, but the rifle's weight steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft, hopeful, wishing for more mornings, carrying you through the day. One fragile sunrise at a time. You're still soaking in the fragile sunrise over that ruined Caen village. The church wall's grit fading from your hands as you shuffle into a chaotic medical tent nearby. 1944, where medics race to patch up the wounded. The air's thick with antiseptic and the coppery tang of blood. And you're gripping your rifle, eyes wide as a medic stitches a screaming GI's leg. Your stomach churns. But you're here to guard the tent, marveling at the frantic dance to save lives. Over 1 million U.S. medics served in World War II, treating 12 million casualties with bare-bone supplies. You're watching a medic pour sulfa powder on a wound, and you're wondering how they keep steady under this pressure. A quirky tidbit: some medics carried whiskey, claiming it calmed patients better than morphine. Historians still argue whether medics' heroics turned the tide or just softened the war's brutal toll. You're standing by the tent's flap, the canvas flapping, as your Brooklyn buddy mutters about hating blood since a childhood scrape. The medic's hands are swift, tying off a bandage while shouting for plasma. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't medics play surgeon? Because their OR's a tent. You're handing a medic a bandage roll, your fingers brushing his bloodied gloves, and you're awed by this fight against death. A stark contrast to your own trigger pulling. The tent buzzes with groans and orders. A shell's rumble shaking the ground. Medics worked miracles, often under fire. But you're picturing a modern ER sterile. Stocked, not this chaos. Another joke: what's a medic's favorite stitch, one that holds? Some GIs whisper thanks to medics. But you're just watching, the scene searing into you. You're thinking of that sunrise's calm, soft, fleeting while this tent's a raw scream of survival. Morning's heat rises, and you're wiping sweat from your brow. The tent's stench clinging. Flies swarm, drawn by blood, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up: some medics scrawled patients' names on their foreheads to track them in the rush. You're wondering how these men kept going, saving lives while shells fell. The tent's loud, save for a patient's gasp and a medic's curse. Another soft joke: what's a GI's favorite hobby? Healing. Because it's someone else's turn. You're starting to see why medics were more than doctors. They were a lifeline, a stitch of hope in Khan's grim day. The sun climbs, and you're stepping outside. The tense chaos lingering in your ears. You're tired, your hands clammy, but the medics inside keep working, faces grim. You're thinking of that skirmish's terror sharp. Close while this scene's a deeper wound. The air's heavy, but your rifle's grip steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft, hopeful, wishing for their strength, carrying you through the morning, one saved life at a time. You're stepping away from the medical tent's chaos near Khan. The medic's shouts fading as you slip into a shady corner of the camp. 1944, where a lively black market barter unfolds. The air's thick with cigarette smoke and the faint clink of cans. And you're clutching a spare K-ration tin, eyeing a British Tommy's offer of chocolate for your biscuits. Your pulse quickens. The thrill of the trade, a break from war's grind. And you're wondering what you can score to make the day bearable. Black market trading was rampant in World War II, with over 15% of U.S. soldiers' rations fueling illicit swaps for comforts like smokes or booze. You're haggling over the chocolate's worth, and you're hoping to outsmart the Tommy. A quirky tidbit: some GIs traded fake whiskey made from tea and sugar, fooling desperate buyers. Historians still argue whether these trades boosted morale or eroded discipline in the ranks. You're crouched by a crate, the camp's bustle masking your deal, as your Brooklyn buddy swaps his socks for a French farmer's eggs, grinning like he's won the war. The Tommy's chocolate looks real, not some wax prank. and you're tossing him your biscuits. The deal's sealed. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play Wall Street? Because their market's mud. You're unwrapping the chocolate. Its sweetness a jolt, and you're savoring the rare treat, a fleeting escape from rations. The camp hums with distant orders, a shell's rumble keeping you alert. Trades where risky officers cracked down, but hunger for variety trumped rules. You're picturing the modern swap meet vintage finds. Snacks, not this wartime hustle. Another joke. What's a soldier's favorite deal? One that tastes good. Some guys barter for love letters, but you're happy with the chocolate. It's melt a small win. You're thinking of that medical tent's grit raw. Urgent while this trades a lighter spark. Afternoon's waning, and you're licking chocolate from your fingers. The crate's edge digging into your thigh. Flies buzz, drawn by the sweetness, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers swapped ammo for wine. A boozy gamble under fire. You're wondering how these men kept their wit, dreaming of shops while bartering in dirt. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's haggle and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby? Trading. Because it's a battlefield score. You're starting to see why bartering was more than greed. It was a game of cunning, a bite of freedom in Khan's relentless day. The sun dips, and you're pocketing the K-ration tin, the chocolate's buzz lingering. You're tired, your hands sticky, but the men around you are striking more deals, eyes sharp. You're thinking of that sunrise is calm, soft, fleeting while this trades a bold pulse. The mud's chill bites, but the chocolate's warmth steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft. Hopeful, wishing for another score, carrying you through the day. One sweet swap at a time. You're still savoring the chocolate's sweet buzz from that black market swap near Khan. The crate's edge fading from your memory as you jog across a muddy field. 1944, to join a grueling training drill under a sergeant's bark. The air's thick with sweat and the sharp tang of gun oil. And you're shouldering your M1 rifle, lungs burning as you drop for push-ups in the muck. Your muscles scream, but you're pushing through, knowing these drills keep you sharp for the fight. Training was relentless in World War II, with U.S. infantrymen spending over 25% of their time on exercises to hone combat skills. Even near active fronts, you're crawling under barbed wire, mud smearing your face, and you're wondering if you'll ever feel ready. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swore their sergeants timed drills with cigarette burns, a smoky stopwatch. Historians still argue whether constant training built unstoppable soldiers or exhausted them before battle. You're sprawled in the dirt. The fields churned chaos around you as your Brooklyn buddy gasps through sit-ups, joking about enlisting for a desk job next time. The sergeant's yelling, calling you ladies as you sprint to a mock trench. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play gym coach? Because their workout's a war. You're firing blanks at straw dummies. The rifle's kicked familiar, and you're wishing for a modern gym treadmills. Smoothies, not this brutal slog. The field roars with shouts and clanks. A shell's distant thud spurring you faster. Drills mimicked combat, from bayonet thrusts to grenade tosses. But you're picturing a fitness app tracked. Tidy, not this. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite rep? A one he survives. Some guys slack off, but you're giving it all. Sweat soaking your uniform. You're thinking of that chocolate trade sweet, sly while this drill's a bitter grind. Afternoon's heat presses, and you're wiping mud from your eyes. The wire's barbs glinting. Flies swarm, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers tied rags to their rifles during drills, mimicking flags to mock the enemy. You're wondering how these men kept grit, dreaming of rest while sweating through hell. The field's loud, save for a buddy's grunt and the sergeant's bark. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Drilling, because it's forced fitness. You're starting to see why training was more than practice. It was a forge of instinct, a sweat-soaked edge in Khan's relentless fight. The sun blazes, and you're collapsing into the trench, the rifle's weight dragging. You're exhausted, your body throbbing. But the men around you are panting, ready for more. You're thinking of that medical tense chaos, raw, urgent, while this drill's a controlled fire. The mud's chill bites, but the rifle's grip steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, hopeful, wishing for a break, carrying you through the day, one aching rep at a time. You're still panting in that muddy trench from the training drill near Caen, the sergeant's bark echoing as you trudge into a nearby French hamlet. 1944, where wary civilians eye you from shattered doorways. The air's thick with dust and the faint smell of baking bread. And you're clutching your rifle, nodding at a stone-faced woman who offers a cup of water. Your throat's dry, and you're sipping cautiously, wondering if her kindness hides fear or hope. Encounters with locals were common for World War II. Two soldiers, with over 60% of U.S. troops in Europe interacting with civilians, often trading goods or tense glances. You're scanning her face for trust, and you're hoping this moment stays peaceful. A quirky tidbit, some GIs taught French kids to say chewing gum for candy handouts, sparking tiny friendships. Historians still argue whether these meetings built goodwill or deepened divides in war-torn towns. You're standing by a cracked fountain, the hamlet's cobblestones uneven, as your Brooklyn buddy tosses a cigarette to a grinning boy, joking about missing his corner bodega. The woman's eyes soften, but her hands stay crossed, guarding her thoughts. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play diplomat? Because their only treaty's a smile. You're offering a K-ration biscuit, her nod a small victory, and you're wishing for a modern cafe small talk. Menus, not this guarded exchange. The hamlet hums with distant hoofbeats, a shell's rumble keeping you alert. Locals often bartered eggs for soap, but trust was scarce. You're picturing a friendly neighbor open, chatty, not this wary dance. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite hello? One without a trap. Some guys overstep, but you're keeping it respectful. The biscuit a bridge. You're thinking of that training drill, grueling, sharp, while this meeting's a softer challenge. Evening's creeping in, and you're stepping back, the water's coolness lingering. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers left doodles on village walls, a fleeting gift for kids. You're wondering how these men connected, dreaming of peace while treading on eggshells. The hamlet's quiet, save for a child's giggle and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Sharing, because it's rare. You're starting to see why civilian encounters were more than moments. They were a glimpse of humanity, a sip of trust in Khan's fragile day. The sun dips, and you're rejoining your squad, the woman's face lingering in your mind. You're tired, your boots heavy, but the men around you are swapping tales of locals, voices low. You're thinking of that chocolate trade sly, sweet while this exchange was deeper. The evening's chill bites, but the rifle's grip steadies you, proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft, hopeful, wishing for more kindness, carrying you through the day, one cautious nod at a time. You're still carrying the memory of that cautious nod from the French woman in the hamlet near Caen. The water's coolness fading as you scramble toward a chaotic mail call in a muddy U.S. camp, 1944. The air's thick with shouts and the rustle of canvas, and you're elbowing through a crowd of GIs, heart racing as a clerk barks names, tossing letters like confetti. Your boots slip in the muck, and you're straining to hear your name, desperate for a scrap of home. Mail calls were a lifeline in World War II, with over 3 billion pieces of mail processed for U.S. troops. A frantic ritual that could spark joy or despair. You're dodging a shoving private, and you're wondering if today's your lucky day. A quirky tidbit, some GIs bribed clerks with smokes for first dibs on parcels. A sneaky camp hustle. Historians still argue whether mail calls unified soldiers or fueled envy when some got nothing. You're pressed against a tent pole. The crowds roar deafening as your Brooklyn buddy snags a package, whooping about his ma's cookies. The clerk tosses a letter your way, and you're clutching it. The papers weight a treasure. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play mailman? Because they'd eat the packages. You're tearing it open. Your mom's handwriting a balm, and you're reading about home's small dramas. The war fading for a moment. The camp pulses with cheers and curses. A shell's distant thud ignored in the frenzy. Letters were censored, but love leaked through. A tether to sanity. You're picturing an email fast. Clean, not this muddy scrum. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite delivery? One that's not. Dear John, some guys trade candy for extra reads. But you're guarding your letter. Its words gold. You're thinking of that Hamlet's kindness, soft. Wary while this mails a louder joy. Evening settling, and you're tucking the letter inside your jacket. The crowd thinning. Flies buzz, drawn by sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers tied letters to their dog tags, keeping home close to their heart. You're wondering how these men clung to hope, dreaming of replies while dodging shells. The camp's quieter, save for a buddy's laugh and the wind's rustle. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Waiting. Because mail's worth it. You're starting to see why mail calls were more than letters. They were a pulse of home, a page of light in Cannes' grim day. The sky darkens, and you're stepping back to your foxhole. The letter's warmth lingering. You're tired, your hands muddy, but the men around you are reading or sulking. Faces lit by hope or loss. You're thinking of that training drill, grueling, sharp while this mail's a softer fuel. The night's chill bites, but the paper's weight steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that chocolate trade suite, sly wishing for more letters, carrying you through the evening, one cherished word at a time. You're still clutching that precious letter from the mail call frenzy near Caen, its paper's warmth fading as you trudge through a drenched field. 1944, where rain pelts your helmet like a drum. The air's thick with wet earth and the faint tang of mildew. And you're shivering, your wool uniform soaked. each step a slog through ankle-deep mud. Weather was a relentless foe for World War II. Two soldiers, with over 30% of U.S. troops in Europe reporting illnesses tied to rain or cold exposure. You're tugging your coat tighter, the water seeping through, and you're wondering if you'll ever feel dry again. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swore they used K-ration wrappers as makeshift ponchos, a crinkly shield against the downpour. Historians still argue whether harsh weather broke soldiers' spirits or toughened their resolve in the face of nature's wrath. You're hunched under a sagging tree, its branches dripping, as your Brooklyn buddy curses the storm, joking about building an ark. The rain's relentless, blurring your vision, and you're wiping your rifle with a rag, praying it won't jam. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play weatherman? Because their forecast's always misery. You're checking your boots soggy, heavy, and you're wishing for modern rain gear Gore-Tex. Snug, not this drenched wool. The field hums with squelching boots and low grumbles. A shell's rumble mixing with thunder. Weather slowed marches, spoiled rations, and sank morale. But you're picturing a cozy cafe umbrella. Latte, not this deluge. Another joke? What's a soldier's favorite rain, one that misses him? Some guys huddle under tarps, but you're pushing on. The mud's grip fierce. You're thinking of that mail call's joy, bright, fleeting while this storm's a colder fight. Evening's gloom deepens, and you're shaking water from your helmet. The tree's shelter failing. Flies buzz, undeterred by the wet, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers carved rain gauges into sticks, mocking the endless downpours. You're wondering how these men kept marching, dreaming of sun while slogging through floods. The field's quiet, save for a buddy's shiver and the rain's patter. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby? Drying. Because it's a fantasy. You're starting to see why weather was more than discomfort. It was a grinding test. A soaked step in Khan's brutal day. The sky's dark, and you're pressing forward. The rain's chill biting your bones. You're tired, your body numb. But the men around you are trudging, heads bowed. You're thinking of that training drill, grueling. Muddy while this storm's a wilder foe. The mud's pull slows you, but the rifle's weight steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft, dry, wishing for warmth, carrying you through the evening, one sodden step at a time. You're still slogging through that rain-soaked field near Khan. The storm's chill seeping into your bones as you huddle in a damp foxhole. 1944. Sharing quiet fears with your squad under a flickering lantern. The air's heavy with wet earth and the faint glow of cigarette smoke. And you're leaning close, your voice low, confessing doubts about surviving tomorrow's push. Your heart's heavy, but the words spill out, binding you to your mates in this fleeting moment. Comrades' talks were a lifeline in World War II. With over 80% of U.S. soldiers citing squad bonds as their main reason to keep fighting. A glue stronger than orders. You're listening to a buddy's story about his girl back home, and you're wondering if these chats keep you sane. A quirky tidbit, some GIs swapped dog tags during talks. A pact to carry each other's memory if the worst came. Historians still argue whether these bonds forged unbreakable units or made losses cut deeper. You're curled against the foxhole's wall, mud crumbling, as your Brooklyn buddy admits he's scared of tanks. his cigarette trembling. The lantern's light dances, softening his face. And you're sharing your own fear of never seeing home. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play therapist? Because their couch is dirt. You're passing a canteen. Its water shared like trust. And you're feeling a strange warmth. The war's weight lifting for a moment. The camp's hushed. Rain muffling distant clanks. Talks like these were rare, stolen between battles. But you're picturing a modern bar beers. Banter, not this muddy confessional. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite secret, one that's kept? Some guys clam up, but you're opening up. The word's a release. You're thinking of that rain's bite cold, relentless while this talk's a softer shield. Night's deepening, and you're dousing the lantern. The foxhole's gloom closing in. Flies buzz, drawn by damp wool, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up, some soldiers whispered passwords to each other. A vow to stick together. You're wondering how these men held tight, dreaming of peace while baring their souls. The foxhole's quiet, save for a buddy's sigh and the rain's patter. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Ticking. Because it's free courage. You're starting to see why these chats were more than words. They were a heartbeat of trust, a whisper of strength in Khan's grim night. The stars are hidden by clouds, and you're pulling your coat tighter. The canteen's weight grounding you. You're tired, your voice hoarse. But the men around you are settling. Faces calmer. You're thinking of that mail call's joy bright. Paper thin while this talk's a deeper anchor. The night's chill bites. But the squad's bond steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft. Hopeful, wishing for more nights like this. Carrying you through the darkness, one shared fear at a time. You're still huddled in that damp foxhole near Khan. The comrades' quiet talk fading as you crawl out to patch up your battered gear. 1944, under a flickering starlit sky. The air's cold, thick with mud's tang and the faint clink of tools. And you're fumbling with a torn pack strap. Your fingers numb as you thread a needle through canvas. Your rifle's bolt needs oil, and you're cursing softly, wondering if this jury-rigged fix will hold in the next fight. Field repairs were a daily chore for World War II. Two soldiers, with over 70% of U.S. infantrymen maintaining their own equipment due to stretched supply lines. You're smearing grease on the bolt, and you're hoping it won't jam when it counts. A quirky tidbit, some GIs use chewing gum to plug holes in canteens, a sticky hack that sometimes worked. Historians still argue whether these makeshift fixes kept soldiers combat ready or just delayed inevitable breakdowns. You're crouched by a crate, the foxhole's edge crumbling as your Brooklyn buddy patches his boot with a scrap of tire rubber, joking about opening a repair shop post-war. The needle pricks your thumb, and you're wincing, the pack's strap barely holding. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play tailor? Because their stitches are shrapnel-proof. You're wiping your rifle's barrel. It's metal icy, and you're wishing for a modern toolbox organized. Electric, not this clumsy kid. The camp's quiet, save for distant snores and a shell's faint thud. Repairs were urgent, as broken gear could mean death. But you're picturing a repair shop bright, stocked, not this. Another joke. What's a soldier's favorite patch? One that lasts. Some guys scavenge enemy gear for parts, but you're making do. The grease slick under your nails. You're thinking of those squad talks warm. Binding while this repairs a lonelier grind. Night's deepening, and you're testing the strap's hold. The rifle's bolts smoother now. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up some soldiers' carved initials into repaired gear. A claim on their survival. You're wondering how these men kept tinkering. Dreaming of home while fixing war's wear. The foxhole's silent, save for a buddy's hammer tap and the wind's moan. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby, patching? Because it's all that holds together. You're starting to see why repairs were more than maintenance. They were a stubborn grip on readiness. A stitch of control in Khan's relentless night. The stars dim through clouds, and you're packing your tools, the pack's weight settling. You're tired, your hands greasy. But the men around you are finishing fixes, eyes weary. You're thinking of that rain's bite cold, wild while this repairs a steady task. The night's chill bites, but the rifle's smooth action steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft, hopeful, wishing for new gear, carrying you through the darkness, one patched strap at a time. You're still wiping the grease from your hands after patching that gear in the Cayenne foxhole. The rifle's smooth bolt a small win as you hunker down near a battered radio. 1944, where propaganda blares from both sides, slicing through the night. The air's thick with static and the faint hum of a distant generator. And you're clutching your M1, the loudspeaker's German voice taunting in broken English about surrender and warm meals. Your skin prickles, the words worming into your thoughts. And you're wondering how much is lies versus temptation. Propaganda was a relentless weapon in World War II, with over 1 billion leaflets dropped by Allies and Axis alike, aiming to break morale. You're kicking away a soggy German flyer promising safety, and you're hoping your squad stays steady. A quirky tidbit, some GIs used enemy leaflets as toilet paper, a defiant jab at the rhetoric. Historians still argue whether propaganda swayed soldiers or just hardened their resolve against the noise. You're crouched by the radio post, mud seeping through your knees, as your Brooklyn buddy scoffs at a British broadcast promising victory, joking about believing his horoscope instead. The German voice fades, replaced by Axis Sally's croon. Her music a cruel tease of home, a quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play radio host? Because their airwaves are all trash talk. You're tuning out the propaganda, focusing on your rifle's grip, and you're wishing for a modern ad blocker silent. Clean, not this psychological jab. The camp's tense, a shell's rumble drowning the broadcast. Propaganda aimed to fracture units, but you're picturing a news podcast filtered. Calm, not this blare. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite tune? One that's not a trap. Some guys collect leaflets for laughs, but you're ignoring them. The radio's noise, a test of grit. You're thinking of those squad talks warm, real while this propaganda's a cold lie. Night's deepening, and you're shifting away from the radio. The static's buzz lingering. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers shouted insults back at loudspeakers, a middle finger to the enemy's voice. You're wondering how these men stayed firm, dreaming of truth while dodging lies. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's mutter and the wind's moan. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Tuning out, because it's survival. You're starting to see why propaganda was more than noise. It was a mental siege, a fight to hold your ground in Khan's restless night. The stars are faint, and you're pulling your coat tighter, the rifle's weight grounding you. You're tired, your mind buzzing, but the men around you are shrugging off the broadcast, faces set. You're thinking of that gear repair steady, real while this noise is a flimsy foe. The night's chill bites, but the squad's quiet defiance steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, true wishing for silence, carrying you through the darkness, one ignored lie at a time. You're still shaking off the propaganda's taunting buzz near Khan, the radio's static fading as you collapse into a shallow foxhole. 1944, grasping at a rare moment to sleep. The air's cold, thick with damp earth and the faint rustle of your squad settling nearby. And you're curling up on a thin blanket, your M1 rifle cradled close, eyes heavy but mind racing. Your body begs for rest, but the war's hum keeps you half alert, wondering if you'll wake to gunfire. Rest was a precious rarity for World War II. Two soldiers, with U.S. infantrymen averaging just 4 to 5 hours of sleep daily. Often snatched in fleeting lulls like this, you're tucking your helmet under your head as a lumpy pillow, and you're hoping for a few unbroken hours. A quirky tidbit some GIs swore sleeping with a cigarette butt under their nose tricked them into dreaming of home. Historians still argue whether these stolen naps recharged soldiers or left them more frayed in the long grind. You're nestled against the foxhole's wall, mud seeping through your blanket, as your Brooklyn buddy snores softly nearby, joking earlier about his bed back home being a Purple Heart-worthy luxury. The blanket's scratchy, barely warm, but you're sinking into it, the night's chill fading. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play sleep champion? Because their snooze is a battlefield. You're pulling your coat over your face, blocking the wind, and you're wishing for a modern mattress plush. Quiet, not this dirt bed. The camp's hushed. A distant shell's thud, a faint lullaby. Sleep was vital but elusive, stolen in foxholes or ruins. You're picturing a hotel room blackout curtains. Soft hum, not this open grave. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite dream? One he wakes from. Some guys clutch letters to sleep, but you're empty-handed, drifting on exhaustion. You're thinking of that propaganda's lies sharp, intrusive, while this rest is a soft escape. Night's deep, and you're slipping toward sleep, the foxhole's walls cradling you. Flies buzz, drawn by your warmth, but you're too tired to swat them. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers tied their boots to their wrists, fearing theft while they slept. You're wondering how these men found peace, dreaming of home in war's lap. The camp's silent, save for a buddy's snore and the wind's sigh. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Napping. Because it's a stolen victory, you're starting to see why rest was more than sleep. It was a fragile refuge, a breath of renewal in Khan's relentless night. The stars are dim through your half-closed eyes, and you're sinking deeper. The blanket's weight grounding you. You're exhausted, your body melting, but the men around you are resting too. A quiet trust. You're thinking of that squad talk, warm, real while this sleeps, a deeper bond. The night's chill bites, But the foxhole's embrace steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft, hopeful, wishing for longer dreams, carrying you through the darkness, one fleeting nap at a time. You're stirring from that brief nap in the foxhole. The blanket's faint warmth fading as you kneel in the pre-dawn chill. 1944, whispering a quiet prayer for strength to face another day. The air's cold, thick with damp earth and the soft rustle of your squad waking. And you're clutching a small cross from home, its edges worn, your lips moving silently, your heart steady, finding solace in faith amid the war's chaos. And you're wondering if these words reach beyond the mud. Religion was a refuge for many World War II. Soldiers, with over 60% of U.S. troops carrying personal talismans like crosses or prayer books for comfort. You're tracing the cross's shape, and you're hoping it carries you through. A quirky tidbit, some GIs scratched Bible verses onto their helmets, believing it shielded them from bullets. Historians still argue whether faith bolstered soldiers' resilience or offered false hope in the face of death. You're tucked against the foxhole's wall, the dirt cool, as your Brooklyn buddy mutters his own prayer, joking earlier about hedging bets with every saint he knows. The cross feels heavy, grounding, and you're murmuring thanks for surviving yesterday's skirmish. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play preacher? Because their sermon's survival. You're slipping the cross into your pocket, its weight a reminder of home. And you're wishing for a modern chapel, peaceful, warm, not this muddy altar. The camp's stirring, a shell's distant thud blending with dawn's hush. Prayer was personal, often shared in foxholes. But you're picturing a quiet church pews, hymns, not this. Another joke. What's a soldier's favorite amen, one that works? Some guys carry dog-eared psalms, but you're relying on memory, the words a shield. You're thinking of that stolen nap fleeting, soft while this prayer is a deeper anchor. Dawn's breaking, and you're rising, the cross's imprint lingering in your palm. Flies buzz, drawn by your warmth, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers swapped prayers with locals, a shared plea across languages. You're wondering how these men found calm, dreaming of heaven while kneeling in hell. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's whisper and the wind's sigh. Another soft joke. What's a GI's favorite hobby? Praying, because it's free hope. You're starting to see why faith was more than ritual. It was a spark of eternity, a breath of peace in Khan's grim dawn. The sky lightens, and you're shouldering your rifle. The prayer's calm, steadying you. You're tired, your body stiff. But the men around you are moving, faces resolute. You're thinking of that propaganda's lies cold, loud while this faith's a silent truth. The morning's chill bites, but the cross's weight steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, hopeful, wishing for more dawns, carrying you through the day, one whispered word at a time. You're still feeling the faint comfort of that whispered prayer in the canned foxhole. The cross's weight steady in your pocket as you crouch behind a hedgerow. 1944, sensing the enemy's presence just beyond the misty field. The air's thick with damp grass and the faint tang of gunpowder. And you're gripping your M1 rifle, your pulse quickening as a twig snaps nearby. Too close for comfort. Your eyes strain through the fog, every shadow a potential German patrol, and you're wondering if they're watching you too. Enemy encounters were a constant threat in World War II, with over 40% of U.S. infantry engagements in Normandy sparked by surprise sightings like this. You're holding your breath, finger near the trigger, and you're hoping to avoid a fight. A quirky tidbit, some GIs tossed pebbles into fields to draw out hidden enemies, a risky game of cat and mouse. Historians still argue whether such tense standoffs sharpened soldiers' instincts or eroded their nerves with dread. You're pressed low, thorns snagging your jacket, as your Brooklyn buddy signals silently, his face taut, pointing to a glint, maybe a bayonet. The fog cloaks the field, amplifying every creak, and you're whispering to hold fire, praying it's just a deer. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play hide and seek? Because the loser's gone for good. You're scanning for movement, the rifle's weight grounding, and you're wishing for modern radar clear. Safe not this blind guess. The camp's distant hum fades. A shell's rumble tightening your chest. Enemy shadows were everywhere, turning lulls into traps. You're picturing a security cam sharp. Instant, not this foggy gamble. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite shadow? One that's empty? Some guys shoot first, but you're waiting, nerves fraying. You're thinking of that prayer's calm, soft, steady while this tension's a sharper blade. Morning's mist thickens, and you're inching back. The hedgerow's cover thinning, flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them quietly. A quirky story floats up. Some soldiers left gifts like empty cans to spook German scouts. You're wondering how these men stayed cool, dreaming of safety while staring down ghosts. The field's silent, save for a buddy's hiss and the wind's moan. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Watching. Because blinking's a risk. You're starting to see why enemy shadows were more than threats. They were a test of nerve, a heartbeat of fear in Khan's restless dawn. The fog swirls, and you're signaling retreat. The rifle's grip slick with sweat. You're tired, your eyes burning, but the men around you are backing off. Steps silent. You're thinking of that nap's refuge brief. Soft while this standoff's a raw edge. The morning's chill bites, but the squad's quiet trust steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, hopeful, wishing for empty fields, carrying you through the day, one cautious glance at a time. You're still inching back from that tense hedgerow standoff near Caen, the fog's chill lingering as you slump against a shattered barn wall. 1944. Pondering what a soldier's day leaves behind. The air's heavy with damp wood and the faint echo of distant artillery. And you're tracing a bullet scar on the barn, your M1 rifle resting beside you, its weight a reminder of the day's grind. Your mind drifts, weaving together the foxhole dawns, the skirmishes, the whispered prayers, and you're wondering how these moments echo beyond the war. Over 16 million U.S. soldiers served in World War II, their daily struggles shaping not just battles, but memories that lingered for decades. You're rubbing dirt from your hands, and you're thinking about the stories etched in every muddy step. A quirky tidbit, some GIs mailed home soil from battlefields, a gritty keepsake of survival. Historians still argue whether soldiers' routines forged a legacy of resilience or a shadow of trauma that haunted generations. You're sitting on a broken plank, the barn's roof half gone, as your Brooklyn buddy sketches a cartoon on a ration wrapper, joking about his war tales outshining Hollywood's. The day's weight rations, drills. Fear feels heavier now, a tapestry of survival. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't GIs play memoirist? Because their story's too raw. You're picturing your letter from home, its words a thread to the future. And you're wishing for a modern blog polished, shared not this fleeting reflection. The camp hums with evening stir, a shell's thud grounding you. Soldiers' days were fleeting, but their impact endured in letters, medals, scars. You're picturing a museum dog tags, photos not this rubble. Another joke, what's a soldier's favorite echo, one that's heard? Some guys carve names on trees, but you're just sitting. The barn's silence a canvas for thought. You're thinking of that enemy shadow tense, ghostly, while this moment's a quieter mark. Night's falling, and you're brushing splinters from your coat. The barn's gloom deepening. Flies buzz, drawn by your sweat, and you're swatting them off. A quirky story floats up, some soldiers buried time capsules of K ration tins, hoping future eyes would understand. You're wondering how these men left traces, dreaming of peace while living war's pulse. The camp's quiet, save for a buddy's hum and the wind's sigh. Another soft joke, what's a GI's favorite hobby? Remembering, because it's all that lasts. You're starting to see why a soldier's day was more than survival. It was a story carved in grit, a mark on Khan's endless fight. The stars peek through the barn's gaps, and you're pulling your coat tighter, the rifle's weight grounding you. You're tired, your mind heavy, but the men around you are settling, faces reflective. You're thinking of that prayer's calm, soft, eternal, while this moment's a lasting thread. The night's chill bites, but the barn's shelter steadies you, proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home, soft, hopeful, wishing for stories told, carrying you through the night, one quiet memory at a time. You're still leaning against that shattered barn wall near Khan, the bullet scars, rough edge fading from your fingers as you sit on a grassy hill overlooking the Normandy fields. 1945, the war's end, a fragile whisper. The air's soft with summer's hum and the faint rustle of poppies. And you're holding your M1 rifle, its weight lighter now, reflecting on how a soldier's day, once a blur of mud, fear, and grit, lives on in memory. You're breathing slow, the field scarred but stirring with life, and you're wondering how these stories of rations, prayers, and foxholes carry forward, tying you to the soldier's legacy. Over 400,000 U.S. soldiers died in World War II. Their daily struggles a testament to courage that shaped a freer world, etched in history's heart. You're brushing a poppy petal, and you're thinking of their days. Each one a thread in your dreams, a quirky tidbit. Some GIs planted flower seeds in old foxholes, leaving blooms where battles raged. Historians still argue whether these stories of soldiers' lives inspire resilience or remind us to guard peace fiercely. You're reclining on the hill, the grass cool, as your Brooklyn buddy, now demobbed, shares a cigarette, joking about telling his kids war tales without the terror. The fields stretch wide, a canvas of survival's cost, and you're struck by their quiet strength. A quiet chuckle hits you. Why don't veterans play storyteller? Because their truth's too heavy. You're picturing a modern memorial granite. Names, yet this hill feels truer, a living tribute to their grit. and you're wishing for a world where such stories are only history lessons. The evening hums with crickets. The war's echoes soft as a fan's hum. Their legacy endures in freedoms won, in the way you cherish home's safety. You're picturing a modern festival flags, joy, not this solemn hill. Another soft joke, what's a soldier's favorite dream? One where peace lasts. You're wondering how their days, foxholes, letters, fights bind us to their sacrifice. A quiet call to remember, the hills still, save for a buddy's sigh and the breezes rustle. Another soft chuckle. What's a veteran's favorite hobby? Living. Because it's their victory. You're starting to see why their days were more than history. They were a gift of endurance, a spark of courage in Normandy's healing fields. The stars emerge, and you're pulling your coat tighter, the rifle set aside. You're tired, your heart full. But the world around you breathes with their legacy, quiet and strong. You're thinking of that barn's scars raw, real, while this hill's a softer close. The night's chill brushes you, but the poppy's glow steadies you. Proof you're still here. You're picturing that letter from home soft, hopeful, wishing for their stories to live on, carrying you into dreams, one eternal memory at a time. You're lingering on that Normandy hill, the poppy's soft glow fading as you sink deeper into the grass. 1945. The soldier's day is now a quiet hum in your mind. The air's warm, whispering of foxholes, letters, and grit. And you're letting their stories settle, each ration tin, each whispered fear, a thread in history's weave. Their legacy, over 16 million lives woven through mud and courage, lives in the peace you breathe, a gift from their relentless dawns. You're picturing that con barn scars, the weight of a rifle, and you're wondering how their days still echo, tying you to their heart. The stars above blur, the breeze a soft fan's hum, and you're drifting, safe in a world they shaped. Let the trenches dissolve, the war's pulse fade, and sleep wrap you gently, their courage a lullaby for your dreams.